happen. We have to really escalate the noise we make so that we'll be heard.
Welcome to Gay USA. I'm Andy Humm.
I'm Ann Northrop.
The big day has arrived. The 50th anniversary of Stonewall Rebellion. Going to be marked here and around the world in New York, and we will bring you at the after a half hour of news. We're going to bring you a video produced and directed by our director, Rich Speziale, about why activists are reclaiming pride this year.
Yeah, it's a lot of our colleagues from the Reclaim Pride Coalition who we brought into the studio to just sit down and talk about things like their first Pride and their experiences at Pride and why they think it's appropriate to have a return to a people's march and get out of the corporatized Pride Parade. And
Rich did a great job of editing it.
Certainly did. So it's a lot of historic footage. It's a lot of cutting back and forth with people talking to the camera. It's really quite moving and fascinating. So that's a 28-minute piece that will appear after we do the news.
And history
Stay tuned.
And history continues to be made.
Yes.
Tiffany Caban, a self-described queer Latina and democratic socialist, declared victory in the Queens County, New York, district attorney's race, promising real reform.
We'll see. And the Human Rights Campaign has named gay civil rights attorney and black gay man Alphonso David as their next president.
More apologies. The American Psychoanalytic Association is sorry for taking an unconscionable amount of time to remove homosexuality from its list of illnesses. They did it over 20 years ago, but it was late.
Well, not as late as the cops, and not as still obnoxious as the cops. Anyway, the Archbishop of Indianapolis is not apologizing. He is cracking down on gay married teachers at Catholic schools in Indianapolis, and he got some mixed results of that.
Yes, he did. Unexpected resistance, and big stars are set to bring Broadway's lesbian-themed The Prom to Netflix.
I can't wait to hear about that because I haven't read that story yet. So we'll do the news, we'll do the video, and then we'll come back and do entertainment news, just so you know the lineup today.
So, I mean, Tiffany Caban, this 31-year-old woman who describes herself as a queer Latina, there she is, scored a narrow victory for the Queens DA's race. The DA of Queens had been there for 100 years, and she's
30 at least.
She's going to succeed him, and she really is promising. She's real reform.
Here's what's most interesting about her: not that she is a queer Latina or 31 years old, all of which are immensely interesting. She's a public defender.
Oh, yes.
She is a public defender who is going to take over as the prosecutor for Queens County, which is an enormous area.
And a graduate of Art Leonard's New York Law School.
Really?
Yes.
Okay. So yes, she really has the capacity for reform from that background.
Well, she's sick of the way people of color are being treated in the justice.
Many of us are, yes.
Justice system.
Yes.
I mean, I'll talk about it later, but I mean, I saw, When They See Us about the Central Park Five who were exonerated, and just whew. Anyway,
So congratulations to Tiffany, who comes out of the Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez movement of democratic socialists in New York City, and was endorsed by Alexandria.
Ocasio-Cortez.
Yes, and also
Jimmy Van Bramer.
Outgate
council member.
Yes, and
Alan Roscoff.
Yeah. So congratulations to her. The Victory Fund had endorsed her in a race against a very strong, more mainstream opponent.
Stop the presses. The New York Times endorsed her. Shocking.
So she won. So congratulations, and we will
Well, I mean,
follow with
there are
interest.
still absentee ballots to be counted, but
Yeah, she won by like one and a half.
Over 1,000, 1.3%.
Well, there are only like 60, 70,000 votes in a borough that has like 800,000 Democrats.
This was a breakthrough.
Yep.
And another breakthrough is that the Human Rights Campaign.
Yes.
In their, 40-year history or something, they have a new president who was an African-American, someone we know well, who's been a guest on this show. He used to work at Lambda Legal Defense, Alphonso David. In recent years, so he was a civil rights lawyer.
Yep.
But in recent years, he's been the counsel to the governor of New York, Andrew Cuomo. A little disturbed when Cuomo tweeted, "You'll always be a member of Team Cuomo."
Well, that's my fear, that we're going to hear about Cuomo for the rest of our life. You know, Chad Griffin was very close to the Clintons,
Yes.
had worked for them in Arkansas, and now we have Alphonso David, who has been working for Cuomo in Albany for years.
So, Alfonso's done a lot of good work, certainly worked
Definitely.
on marriage equality, but lots of things at Lambda before that. And HRC posted a video by him talking about his life. He comes from Liberia.
Well, he was born here. He moved to Liberia with his family. His uncle became the president of Liberia, but then there was a coup, and
His father was arrested.
and he thought he might be killed, and they had to flee back to the United States.
So I'd recommend you go to hrc.org and look at the video of
Yes.
about Alphonso David, and maybe we'll try to get him back on the show and talk about his priorities.
Absolutely. But he's become adept at legislative maneuvering and has always been an effective lawyer, and so he brings a lot of skills to this job.
Yes, he does.
And it'll be very interesting
Yes,
to
he
see with him at HRC, Tiffany Caban in Queens. A lot of stuff going on.
Should we talk about the week in Trump?
Sure.
Well, we learned what we kind of already knew about the way they interfered with the rainbow flag flying over the Stonewall National Monument.
Old
All
news.
that. Well, it's been confirmed through emails. But his friends at Fox and Friends had a very different way of celebrating Pride Week. They brought in a whole stack of Chick-fil-A, and this was their way of celebrating the fact that the Texas legislature passed a bill that says you can't discriminate on the basis of religious belief of a company or the donations that they make when you're deciding on a franchise at the airport, because San Antonio Airport wouldn't accept Chick-fil-A.
And yet their dresses and ties sort of made a rainbow flag across the
yes,
street.
and if you'll bring that picture back, you'll notice they're not wearing their hoods. Boom. They're awful people.
Da-dum-dum.
Awful people.
And interesting little Pride news at the Department of Justice. The LGBTQ employees met with Attorney General Barr.
Behind closed doors.
Well,
unconfirmed by the Justice Department.
Well, but the story is that they really went after him on the issues of discrimination against LGBTQ employees at the FBI and at the Bureau of Prisons.
And how about the way the Justice Department has been treating our cases in the justice system right now?
All of that.
Yeah.
No news that he paid any attention or is doing anything about it. I thought, to me, the great thing is that they were brave enough to go in there and confront him, which tells me something about the level of anger among the employees at the Justice Department.
Well, Trump is supposed to care about the polls. Do you think he cares that the Gallup poll now shows 71% for trans people serving in the military?
No.
All right.
No, why should he? He's gotten away with everything, no matter what the polls say. Why should he pay any attention to that?
Well, you say get away with everything. He knows he's slipping. He knows he's slipping.
And he has plenty of defenses for that. He's very adept at that.
All right.
All right. The New York State legislature has been busy with various things as they move to adjournment. They postponed their decision on whether to legalize paid surrogacy.
That's true.
Saying that they're going to talk about more protections for women in the bill. Deborah Glick, out member of the Assembly.
Forever.
First out member of the Assembly, was demanding something more protective. But Andy Cohen of Bravo is whining about the fact that they wouldn't pass the bill immediately.
Well,
he went up to lobby.
This was Brad Holman's bill. They didn't legalize marijuana, but they expanded decriminalization. So up to 2 ounces is a violation now, not a crime. Illinois' legislature legalized recreational marijuana use.
They restored state benefits for LGBT people kicked out of the military under Don't Ask, Don't Tell.
Well, they abolished cash bail for all but certain violent felonies, which is 90% of those charged, and that would have affected the case of Layleen Polanco, Polanco, who died on Rikers Island because she couldn't make $500 bail.
Her family, by the way, is demanding faster autopsy results. A little strange that we don't have them now.
They approved much more extensive anti-harassment laws, sexual harassment laws in this state. They've eliminated the severe or pervasive standard for proving harassment.
They also banned the gay or trans panic defense for those who attack us and who want to claim that they were freaked out by us.
Statute of limitations for second-degree rape was extended from 5 to 30 years. Watch out, Mr. Trump, who was accused of another rape this week, which happened 20-something years ago.
They also failed to pass some stuff we were interested in, including the law that allows the police to implement what we call walking while trans. The police are very quick to just grab trans kids on the street and accuse them of loitering and pick them up for that.
Sure.
And the legislature had a bill to abolish that, but they failed to pass that.
Right.
They won't. They dismissed an attempt to limit solitary confinement.
Right. All right.
All right.
Well,
in Kansas City, Missouri, we had, this has been the year of the lesbian winning political offices, mayoralties, et cetera. But Jolie Justice was in a runoff for mayor of Kansas City, Missouri, and she lost that runoff quite largely.
But Kansas will now allow trans people to change their birth certificates to reflect their gender identities under a legal settlement with, now that they have Democratic Governor Laura Kelly in a federal lawsuit. Governor Brownback, the Republican, horrible, wouldn't even allow changes to your documents after transition.
Well, back to Missouri, they picked up a guy in St. Louis who's got a long criminal record for making horrible, violent threats against the Pride Parade there. He was threatening to go murder everyone at the Pride Parade, but they got him.
Okay. You want more violent stories?
Also in Kansas City, Missouri, trans woman Brooklyn Lindsay, 32 years old, was found beaten to death. They're not sure whether she was shot.
Awful.
Another murder of a trans woman.
Someone I know very well, a guy named Raymond Leclerc, who works at New Alternatives for Homeless Youth. He used to be a homeless youth himself. He's not gay, but he serves gay people. He's the outreach coordinator now. He was just walking home after work on 42nd Street on the east side, and a guy jumped him, started calling him the faggot and everything, and they got into a fight, and he was given a concussion. Awful.
And in Connecticut, our favorite Alliance Defending Freedom has gotten 3 female high school students to file a suit with them against trans athletes. They think that...
Yeah. How are these girls going to feel when a woman to man, transgender person now has to compete against them and is going to win all their tournaments?
Yes,
exactly, as a girl.
Yeah.
How are they going to feel about that?
Yeah, well, I don't think they've gotten to that point yet.
Well,
but I'm sure the Alliance Defending Freedom will find a way to hypocritically denounce that also.
In Brooklyn, New York, a superintendent of a building yelled at a gay couple that was seen kissing in the building, and they were absolutely gobsmacked by this because he said, you don't belong here. We don't want any gays in this building. So somebody explained the law to him. He said, "Oh, I'm sorry." He wants to keep his job, but he was totally ready to throw them out on their ears. This is a straight building, he said. Brooklyn.
Well, Google is ready to throw out its LGBT employees. They're having a big fight because you remember the story of the guy on YouTube, the right-winger who was being very provocative and yelling at a gay guy who's on YouTube and was really hideously mean. And so everyone wanted Google, which owns YouTube, to do something about it. They ended up eventually cutting off his commercialization or something.
It did.
But the LGBT employees...
He makes like over $1 million a year on that.
The LGBT employees are mad at Google for this. So Google puts out a memo to its LGBT employees about San Francisco Pride and says you are not allowed to criticize Google if you are marching with Google in the Pride Parade.
Why don't they just change the name of the company to Big Brother?
Well, the employees are now asking the San Francisco Pride Parade to throw Google out of the parade. Now, we have a lot of reasons for throwing corporations out of the parade, but I love this fight.
Now, we're going to show you a lot about the New York Queer Liberation March run by Reclaim Pride, but on the same day, if you can't make it, in Paxton, Illinois, a farm town of 4,000 people, they're going to have a march on Sunday, organized by a guy who's 54, an out gay man who's been living there since moving there with his family in 1969. So you go at 11 a.m. to Pell's Park and march downtown.
All right, we don't have time for this.
All right.
Indianapolis.
Ugh.
The Archbishop has told 2 Catholic high schools to get rid of their married gay teachers.
So one of them's a Jesuit high school, and they said no. We love him, there's no problem. And the bishop says, okay, you can't call yourself a Catholic school anymore.
And they don't care because they don't get money from the Archdiocese.
Yes. On the other hand,
Also in Indianapolis,
Cathedral
High School, under threat from the Archbishop, fired their gay teacher, their gay married teacher, because they have more to lose. They are more tied into the Archdiocese, and they are more connected financially.
That's right.
And
there have
with
been
their
80
teachers.
cases like this in America in the Catholic Church since 2008.
In Voorhees, New Jersey, the Voorhees Diner, or somewhere in New Jersey, the Voorhees Diner paid a waiter, a gay waiter, Brian Peake, $20,000 because he was continually harassed by other staff. They called him faggot. They harassed him on a daily basis. Management did nothing.
Well,
so now they have to pay him.
In Chicago, Jesse Smollett is not out of the woods. A judge ordered a special prosecutor to investigate the charges that he staged that attack against himself and look in why the prosecutor dropped the charges. But then again, the American Psychoanalytic Association did issue a big apology for, 20 years after the American Psychiatric Association dropped us from illness. They did. It was just very, very late. And but they said,
our
sorry.
role in the discrimination and trauma caused by our profession was inappropriate.
Absolutely.
They apologized for
Okay.
it. In Byron, Georgia, a trans woman who was the fire chief was fired.
Yep.
They said that she didn't stay certified as an arson investigator. Well, let's see how you think that excuse holds up. They had cops escort her out of the building immediately.
It was technicalities, and she's obviously contesting it. And she's the one who professionalized the department.
Exactly.
And reduced, helped with fire safety. In Alabama, Roy Moore is officially back. Even Trump doesn't want him, and he'll be the likely Republican nominee for the U.S. Senate there in 2020. And that gives Doug Jones his best chance for re-election.
I hope so. Elizabeth Warren has signed on to Taylor Swift's petition for the Equality Act.
In Buffalo, gay guy Mitchell Nowakowski won the Democratic primary for city council, the first out official there in 20 years.
And congratulations to the U.S. women's soccer team, which has a number of out lesbians on it and is doing very well at the World Cup. There is the couple, Allie Krieger and Ashlyn Harris, known as Crashlyn. They are getting married in December, they've announced. They'd announced their engagement before, but now they've told us they're marrying in December. When they are on the road with the team, they do not room together. They're a couple, but they're very professional about their soccer.
But Trump criticized the U.S. women's soccer co-captain, Megan
Rapinoe.
for not singing the national anthem or putting her hand over her heart. She has to stand, or the association is going to stop. They don't let people kneel. But put her hand over her heart. Trump doesn't even know where his heart is. He wouldn't know where to put it, and he doesn't know the words to the song.
No. Interesting statistic from Pew Research.
Yeah.
They say 75% of gay and lesbian people are out, although I wonder how they would know. If people are not out, how are you going to survey them?
Well,
but they said only 19% of bisexuals are out.
It's harder. It's harder for folks. We have to make it easier. In
All right.
Kentucky, Henderson City Commission voted 7-2 for a fairness audience. That's 20 years after passing one and rescinding it. And there are 10 other Kentucky cities that have it. And I think, Cracker Barrel threw out that anti-gay guy we told you about who wants to kill us all, the former sheriff. Cracker Barrel.
I know.
Who used to be our enemy.
Many years
International
ago.
news?
Yes. In Ecuador, they approved marriage equality recently. Well, now the evangelicals are protesting and are appealing the decision, even though they cannot win. And 30 couples have already registered to marry.
In Georgia, the country, Pride March was called off because of political drama. Yes, but in Kiev, in the Ukraine, 8,000 marched. We have a picture of this under very tight security.
See all
Look
those
at that.
cops?
Because the Ukrainian Orthodox religious nuts and everything were threatening to harm them.
In Sao Paulo, Brazil, and Brazil, of course, is now living under the Bolsonaro regime, they had a huge pride parade, which was very anti-Bolsonaro in its affect. We had the first out trans person of color member of the Brazilian legislature come speak to Reclaim Pride. She wanted to express solidarity, and there's going to be a big Brazilian contingent in the Reclaim Pride parade.
And in Costa Rica, President Carlos Alvarado marched in the Pride March and said, "You will never walk alone again," and the vice president marched too. And in
Taiwan, where marriage for same-sex couples was legalized on May 24th, a month later, 1,173 couples have married and 2 have divorced.
Yes. And Prince William visited a gay charity that helps gay youth and was asked how he'd feel if his kids, one of his 3 kids, were gay or more. And he said, "I'd be absolutely fine. I'd be worried about what might happen to them, but I'd be absolutely fine."
50 people in Germany went to the Buchenwald Memorial for 650 people who wore the pink triangle in the concentration camp. They brought a rainbow flag and laid flowers on the memorial. And this is, I believe, it looks like it's in too good shape, so I'm not sure whether it's a replica or the real thing, but that is the pink triangle worn by gay men in German concentration camps. Lesbians were assigned black triangles.
AIDS news?
Yes, quickly.
Kamala Harris wants to cover PrEP without copay and require insurance companies to cover tests to monitor your health while you have it. How about just, covering all the pharmaceuticals?
And a public education campaign about PrEP.
And New York State has authorized full regimen of PrEP for sexual assault victims through the Office of Victim Services, offering payment assistance. Okay.
Anything else?
No, we're all right.
So this year with Pride coming up, and we hate the corporate pride, we started the Reclaim Pride Coalition to produce the Queer Liberation March, a people's political march, just people in the streets.
Yes. This is a former Grand Marshal speaking.
Yes.
And I've been to 45 Pride marches in New York, but we're both sick of it.
I rented a horse to ride down the middle of Fifth Avenue as a Grand Marshal, but I hate it now. So, because corporations don't belong in leading the parade. So, for Reclaim Pride, we produced a 28-minute video that explains a lot of it from a very personal perspective by the people who are among the organizers. And we thought we would show you this video about Reclaim Pride.
My first Pride was Brooklyn Pride in 2014. It was incredible. It's like so lovely. It's a community gathering. They've got vendors and booths for information, activism, organizations, vendors, food, and then at the end there's this parade, and there are no floats, no corporations, and just families and people of all walks of life all coming together to celebrate this community and to build more community.
My first march, 1981, was just 2 years after I came out. So that march has a special place in my heart, and it was really just one of gay abandon, literally. And I was happy, it was fun, it was great, it was in London, it was 1981, all was good.
So I went to Pride a couple years before what I consider is actually my first Pride, because I went when I thought I was cishet and an ally to a lot of my friends. And then a couple years later, I discovered, oh no, I'm non-binary and super queer.
My first Pride was supposed to be in 2016, but it was the year of the Pulse shooting, so I was too scared to go.
I wanted to go into a gay pride parade in 1974, before I was in the movement. And I lived on Long Island. I snuck into the city and didn't tell my parents or anybody where I was going. And I watched this thing, this amazing, all these gay people. And I just took my first real public step, and I jumped into the thing.
I was moving into my first apartment. I was 19 years old. It was 1976. I was closeted, and I was so naive. I knew nothing about the gay culture, except to stay away from it. The ironic thing was that the apartment I was moving into was located at Christopher Street and the West Side Highway. I had no idea that I was moving into the epicenter of the gay culture during the height of the gay revolution. And it was on Gay Pride Day.
I am originally from Denver, and I came out in high school, so I remember going to some Pride festivities in Denver.
I was not a participant, I was not a spectator in any way, but I was trying to drive cross town. And the person who was driving the car got frustrated at those fucking queers. And at the time, I was fairly much in the closet, but acknowledging all of my inner desires that were bubbling up. And it was really, it was disheartening. And I sat in that seat and had issue with myself for not saying something. But it's like, what do I say? Anyway.
My early experiences with Pride were less than underwhelming. I just didn't enjoy it. I felt very disconnected. I didn't like standing on the sides and watching, and I didn't have a real, I came here from Mexico, and so I felt very disconnected, and I didn't know how one could participate or how I could participate.
My first Pride Parade was here in New York City. I was meeting up with a friend of mine down over by Christopher Street, and we were really on opposite corners of each other, but we didn't meet each other for about an hour and a half because of the barriers and the crazy traffic and the police and all of the people.
The first time I ever attended a gay pride was in Brooklyn, the first Brooklyn Gay Pride, I guess in 1996 or 1997. But early on, I was offered the alternative of attending the Drag March, which started in 1994, which is a part of New York City Gay Pride weekend, some might say. And I found that satiated my desire to act up, if you will. And it was an alternative to the corporately saturated march as it exists today.
So my first Pride was in 2017. I went to the New York City Pride Parade with my partner. Prior to that, I didn't even know I was a member of the community. I went to them as an ally, but not for me.
There were men everywhere, and they were openly holding each other's hands. Everyone was chanting, off the sidewalks, into the streets. I was standing on the sidewalk. And my future was in front of me. I had no choice. I could not hide in the closet any longer. So I joined them in the streets. And in that moment of stepping out of the closet, I took my first step from oppression and towards liberation.
That's what Pride was, you know, an old rallying cry that the original marchers, UCL, was off of the sidewalks into the streets. For years and years, that was a part of Pride. Anybody watching the march go by could just hop in and join anytime that they wanted to.
Now, Heritage of Pride requires everyone in the parade to wear a wristband and march within the metal barricades. This prevents people on the sidewalk from spontaneously joining the parade in the street.
We were then told that each marching contingent, regardless of affiliation or group, would be limited to the number of marchers that would be able to march in each group, and that in order to police that contingent size for each group, that there would have to be wristbands that would have to be picked up by the organizers of each group and worn by all of the members in order to allow them to enter into their staging area.
Honestly, we almost left before we actually stepped off because it was super loud and we were waiting for hours just to get into the parade itself.
I had always been participating in the march as opposed to being a bystander, and I did get the chance a couple of years ago to actually watch some of the march go by, and it wasn't pretty. Well, maybe they were pretty, but the march wasn't pretty.
Suddenly, there were lots more of these French bike rack barricades all along Fifth Avenue. Suddenly, the West Village became just a rabbit warren of all of these sort of barricades. People could no longer step off of the street and join the march any longer. Our movements became constrained. The police presence in the West Village after the march got higher and higher. We would hear more and more arrests of young queer people of color in the West Village during the weekend of Pride. Things just began to get harsher and harsher.
I have gone to every Pride from 1974 to 2018. In most recent decades as a reporter to cover it for the Gay City News and for the Gay USA show. So I've been to all of the 45 of them, and I'm gotten sick of it because it is this sclerotic affair where people wait on side streets and don't move, and it takes 9 hours and it exhausts people. And this past year, I joined with Reclaim Pride to oppose the idea of wearing wristbands in order to get in the march, because with wristband, a kid like me in 1974 wouldn't have had a wristband and couldn't have even been in the march.
So this year, instead of going to the regular Pride parade, I'm a part of a march that's supposed to be about rights. It's about the trans people who are the reason why we have the Pride parade, who fought the police, black, brown, lower income, disabled. Those are the people that this march is about.
It's disingenuous for them to try and claim this march history and this march legacy and speaking for the people when that's not really what they're doing. The simple idea of putting barricades down and having spectators and participants is an entertainment model that does not work for trying to give voice to people's problems, to the oppression that exists in society, to the stigma that we live with every single day. That's what needs to be addressed.
There are so many different people, organizations, groups that have been kind of left out in a lot of ways in the way that Heritage of Pride organizes the annual Pride Parade, which they try to call March, but which is really a parade.
This rainbow party has nothing to do with people's stories. And I think in the Dyke March there is love, there is outrage, there is passion, there is community, and there is joy and reverence all at the same time. And I think that's really what we're trying to emulate in 2019, 50 years since the Stonewall Rebellion here in New York City.
A lot of companies give money to politicians and candidates who don't support LGBTQIATS+ rights. And it really frustrated me, like the corporatization and all the floats, when the rest of the year you don't hear them talk about Pride, you don't hear them promote LGBTQIATS+ people.
From my understanding, the goals of Reclaim Pride are to kind of band together our community and give ourselves a stronger voice together to fight for the things that our government is currently trying to take away from us and actually succeeding in taking away from us. And it's not just our community, because our fight is intersectional.
We had several conversations with Heritage Pride through that summer, just about what the next year's Pride March would be. Whether or not for the 50th anniversary of Stonewall, whether or not Heritage of Pride would put activism and put the rights of LGBTQTSIA people globally at the forefront of this march, as well as honoring the history of the Stonewall Rebellion.
When you look back on what times were like when that first Christopher Street Liberation Day Parade March happened, it was incredibly dangerous to be identified as a gay person within our culture, as a lesbian person.
At least 300 people have been arrested by the police in the New York area during the last 3 weeks.
What do you want the police to do?
We want them off our backs. We want them to stop harassing us, stop pushing us around.
The dialogue hadn't quite progressed socially enough to include other marginalized people within our community, but even to be identified as gay was cause for physical harm, but certainly you were likely to lose your livelihood.
It was a lot harder back then to be out and to fight for those rights. Like, now it's not super easy, but it is a lot easier.
I became a teacher, and often when I would bring up the history of the Stonewall Uprising, many of my students, many of them queer and trans, had no idea about that uprising. They had no idea why we celebrated Pride. They themselves just saw it as a big party. And that really changed my thinking around what Pride should look like.
It was the first time that members of the LGBTQIATSA+ were able to walk out freely, and we were able to say this is how it is because this is who we are. And it wasn't fancy, and it wasn't celebrity.
We want to have what we had in 1970, which is a civil rights march, a human rights march, a march for our liberation.
It's putting the people who are the most marginalized in front, and I think that's the thing that we need to focus on. I don't believe that the regular Pride Parade does this.
We can sort of take a cue from those folks who led that first march, and certainly the Stonewall Uprising, to include all aspects of our community, which is broad and wide, and show America and the world that we are still vanguards of our culture, especially when it comes to issues around social justice and human rights.
The people who run it feel we need a lot of money to do what we do, so we're going to involve a lot of corporations and take their money, and they're going to pay for things, and we're going to give them prime spots, and it's absolutely insane. I mean, it doesn't give priority to people involved in the LGBTQIATS+ movement, which is what it's supposed to be about. And the community groups are the groups that should be featured.
This march isn't just about being proud, but about seeking justice and making people aware of some of these problems that are happening everywhere else in the world to our community.
As a queer woman, that's my history. Those are the people on whose shoulders I stand now. the reason for the life and the opportunities, privileges in some form, being as I live in a Western democracy, but it's the core, it's the foundation of gay liberation.
Pride used to be a time of freedom in this city, freedom for our communities. It was a time of community, it was a time of freedom, it was a time of just sort of unfettered liberation. And as time went on, it just became more corporatized, it became more constrained, it became more policed, and more about the exertion of control over our queer lives rather than the celebration of our queer lives.
From what I've seen of Black LGBTQIA+ culture, a lot of Black people do not feel included and don't go to the Pride Parade. And that's something I've noticed, and I want to be a part of this march because I feel included and I feel highlighted as a member of this community.
Pride is over-policed. In many ways, it's become a celebration of an institution that harms Black and brown people, poor people. So I got involved because I wanted to imagine a pride without institutions of violence, and a pride that actually celebrated people fighting back against these institutions and demanding their liberation.
We want no police at the march. Because the police are the ones that are the reason the Stonewall riots happened, because a Black trans woman named Marsha P. Johnson and Sylvia Rivera, a Latinx trans woman, they were fighting with the police.
I believe in the gay power. I believe in us getting our rights, or else I would not be out there fighting for our rights. That's all I wanted to say to your people. If you all want to know about the people that are in jail, and do not forget Bambi Lamore and Dora Marks, Kenny Messner, and other gay people that are in jail, come and see the people at Star House on 12th Street, on 640 East 12th Street, between B and C, apartment 14. The people that are trying to do something for all of us, and not men and women that belong to a white middle class, white club, and that's what you all belong to. Revolution now! Give me a G! Give me an A! Give me a Y! Give me a P! Give me an O! Give me a W! Give me an E! Give me an R! Gay power!
The police are the reason why this march exists, are the reason why we have this history. So I think it is very dismissive that the police have never apologized to our community, and the police ride in the parade when a lot of people in the community do not feel safe, and especially as a Black woman who has seen a lot of injustice against Black people in all of this country's history, I don't think it's appropriate to have police at the parade.
What we do for the least in our community just has a benefit that trickles up, right? If you have these corporations paying living wages to queer and trans people, that benefits the rest of society too. And if you have the police stop harassing trans people and Black and brown people, that benefits also straight people.
People take for granted that you can get same-sex couples can get married now. That could be reversed by the Supreme Court, so that states could go back to not allowing it anymore, because many of them have laws against it, or they can just trim what benefits they have to give us if they want. So that's just in the United States. And of course, there's a tremendous amount of anti-gay violence that never stopped and that we still have to address. And my God, the rights of transgender people.
Here in New York City, we can walk down the street hand in hand, which was something that people were fighting for in the early days. But Can a transgender individual walk down the street holding someone's hand? Not so much.
I'm on the board of New Alternatives for Homeless LGBT Youth. Our kids, the transgender kids, they are constantly getting arrested in the city of New York by the police just for walking down the street. It's an easy arrest for the police. They say you were prostituting yourself when they have no relationship to that.
We've spoken about, and we continue to speak about, the bravery and the revolutionary acts of our elders in 50 years ago. And if we can't be at least as loud as they were back then what are we even doing this for? There are children, little children in our country are killing themselves because of anti-LGBTQIATS plus bullying by other little children. There are trans women who are being beaten and murdered at beyond alarming rates in this country. And abroad, there are families receiving their sons' bones after being tortured and murdered for being gay. Homosexual acts are punishable by death in many countries, and trans people are being beaten and killed just for daring to be themselves. If you can sit quietly or sit through a rainbow-colored party through all of this, how can you even sit through that? How can you not stand up and say something?
My name is Colin Patrick Ashley. I'm an activist and an organizer with People's Power Assemblies. I'm also a graduate student at the CUNY Graduate Center and an adjunct professor at Hunter. I use he, him, his pronouns.
My name is Desi Hendra. I'm part of the DSA Queer Caucus, which is actually kind of, I think, where Reclaim Pride started.
Hi, my name is J.W. Walker. I am a gay black man. I'm 52 years old almost. I live in New York City. I am a founding member of Gays Against Guns, Rise and Resist, and the Reclaim Pride Coalition. And Sing Out Louise.
We don't want just equal rights under the current system, but I think the idea is to redefine the system so that nobody is actually an oppressor or oppressed.
My name's Amanda Lugg, she, her, and I identify as a queer woman.
I'm Sister Lottie Da of the Missionary Order of Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence. When I'm not dressed like this, most people know me as Huckleberry, though.
We know that marginalized people, people of color, on a daily basis are far more likely to be harassed, arrested, right, and imprisoned. That continues today. Trans people, it's a similar kind of scenario. If you're outside of the, you must look, normal, if you're outside of that, you are a target. You're a target by general population to be discriminated against. And in many parts of the world and the country, it's legal.
I'm Andy Humm. I've been a gay activist since 1974, very involved with the Coalition for Lesbian and Gay Rights that passed the Gay and Lesbian Rights Bill in New York City. Worked as an AIDS and sexuality educator at Hedrick Martin Institute, and have been the co-host of the Gay USA show since 1985.
My name's Carly. I'm 25. I identify as lesbian, queer, dyke, whatever. I came out in 2013, and I went to my first Pride in 2014.
Hi, I'm Sage. My pronouns are she, her, and I am a transgender lady who is a part of the Reclaim Pride Coalition.
Heritage of Pride, New York City Pride, says they need their money. So they allow corporate floats and corporate contingents in huge numbers, bigger numbers even than in the gay community groups numbers, to march. And it takes up a tremendous amount of space. They're just doing it for advertising. I mean, if the corporations wanted to stand on the sidelines holding a banner saying TD Bank, we support you, that'd be nice and they could support us. But they're taking up a lot of space, time, and we don't even get to have a march that we can enjoy that day.
Hi, I'm Francesca. I'm a 23-year-old bisexual black girl. I live in New York City. I'm an accountant.
Hi, my name is Philip, and my preferred pronouns are he, him, his. I identify as queer.
What we're really here to do with Reclaim Pride is to honor this history with a march that starts in the West Village and goes up to the park, just as they did 50 years ago. that has space for our most marginalized members of our community who might not be able to see themselves in this other city-sponsored parade, and has without barriers on the street so that anybody can enter off the sidewalks at any time. This is a march for everyone with no police presence, which would endanger many of our community members, and with no corporate floats, because Pride is not about the corporations. Pride is about the liberation of the people.
Hi, I'm Gabriel San Emeterio, and I am the co-host of Rainbow Notes NYC, a radio show out of Hunter College Radio. I am a queer man, queer Latinx man, and my pronouns are he, she, they, and I like to have them mixed.
Hey, my name is Paul Nacera, and I am a bisexual activist and community organizer in New York City.
Hi, I'm Sean Stefanik. I'm with Gays Against Guns, Rise and Resist, Sing Out Louise, and now Reclaim Pride Coalition. My pronouns are he, him.
Pride needs to be about people continuing to demand equality, demand freedom, demand liberation, and that from those demands there is also, of course, love and celebration. But the world needs to change, and queer and trans people are a part of that change.
Because it's the 50th anniversary. You know, we're going to celebrate it once, and we're going to celebrate it with a huge bang. But I'd like to see that just be around more than it is, instead of just a tourist destination, you know, taking your photo outside Stonewall Inn.
I'm excited about making a scene. I'm excited about doing something that hasn't been done in many, many years, because what started in the 70s has turned into a corporate parade. And while that's nice to be like celebratory and like good to be mainstream, like I don't want to be mainstream. I want to fight.
We have a reason to be joyful. We're alive, right? But if we're not respected, then we have a reason to march.
This movement has become so capitalist. It is a capitalist movement. I didn't believe that I would have to sit here 32 years later and basically bitch about the fact that they have become so capitalist. This is no longer my pride. I gave them their pride, but they have not given me mine.
Thank you very much, Rich, for that. Great
well,
job.
It's great to see Sylvia yelling at the crowd in 1973, because they deserved it, because they were being mean to her.
I wasn't there. I was
Well, neither was I.
I started in '74.
But that's why I like seeing it. She was not afraid to yell at middle-class white people who didn't care about trans people and didn't want to take on those issues.
And now they're putting a statue up to her in New York.
Yeah, but they're still being horrible to people on the street.
In entertainment news, the Canadian actor Connor Jessup, 25 years old, of American Crime, has come out. He says he's known since he was 13. He said, "My shame took the form of a shrug, but it was shame. I was suspended in privilege. I balked. It took me years. It's ongoing." He made a very beautiful statement on Instagram about it.
Janet Mock has signed a deal with Netflix to write, direct, executive produce projects on underrepresented people. The first couple of things on her plate are a half-hour drama and a college series. Now, I must say, when I turn on Pose and I see, you know, written by Our Lady J and directed by Janet Mock on this week's episode. It really
Sure.
it brings a smile to my
Sure.
face. I'm happy about that.
Not bringing a smile to my face, but tears was when I saw When They See Us. I finally got Netflix. This is Ava DuVernay's series about the devastating indictment of the criminal justice system. They were called the Central Park Five. Now they're the Exonerated Five. This was produced by Oprah Winfrey, and it does. I won't tell you. You have to watch it. I won't tell you that, but there is a transgender character in this series.
Okay. And I think we're also recommending Stonewall the Opera, which got a great New York Times review.
I heard mixed reviews.
But what I liked in the review, maybe this is why I remember it well, is the guy who wrote the review talked about seeing this and remembering seeing the Maria Callas documentary, which I also saw, and he remembered the same thing from it, which was the gay men lined up outside Carnegie Hall in 1965.
Yes.
Being interviewed by local TV and
Yes.
so obviously gay.
Yes.
And it was so poignant to see them. And
Yes.
he talked about that in the review.
The picture
too.
on the screen was of Jordan Weatherston Pitts in the middle there playing a drag queen, but it does, but it did have also the first trans role written for a trans singer, Liz Bauk.
Great controversy going on about Taylor Swift's new single, You Need to Calm Down, which is a Pride-themed video that includes cameos by Katy Perry, Ellen DeGeneres, Jesse Tyler Ferguson, the Queer Eye guys. And there's some thought that this is a little too celebrity, a little too bouncy, not really serious enough. But the You Need to Calm Down, I think, is a reference to Sylvia Rivera, which I can't remember whether it was in that video we showed, but that was close to one of her signature comments.
All right. Well, The Prom, one of my favorite musicals, is closing on Broadway August 11th. It's a lesbian-themed musical. It's wonderful. See it if you can. But Ryan Murphy is doing the movie on Netflix. He's not taking the Broadway cast. It's going to star Nicole Kidman, Meryl Streep, Ariana Grande, Andrew Rannells, Keegan-Michael Key, and James Corden. And it'll be on Netflix. Wow.
Some people,
it's quite a cast.
Some people just get all the jobs.
I know, but the Broadway cast was great. But anyway, in London, it was nice to see David Mamet's vile Me Too drama about Harvey Weinstein go down. It was clobbered by the critics.
Everybody.
It included the idea of casting a Korean actress as a gay Anne Frank and doing an Asian reboot of Gone with the Wind. He's just become
Kinda
thoroughly
lost it.
vile.
Well, he's run out of things to say,
So,
perhaps.
Mexican
TV has a new telenovela coming along that stars a gay couple. This is the first time they've had a gay couple as stars, but it is a spin-off from a previous soap opera.
So we're going to see you at Sunday morning at 9 o'clock down at Sheridan Square, Stonewall Place. And then, of course, next
The
week...
march kicks off at 9:30.
Right. And then,
or come to Bryant Park by 11, and we'll be picking up the crowd there along the way. Or come to the rally in Central Park from 1 to 4 p.m.
And on the 4th of July, I'll be with our lawyer, Norman Siegel, at West 72nd Street in Riverside for the reading of the Declaration of Independence at noon.
And next week's show will be a recap of all the events around the parades and marches on Sunday.
We'll be out there. Thanks for watching.
Bye.
Happy
Pride.